Hey everyone. So there's a new kid on the cybersecurity compliance block called CMMC. But how new is it? And do you really need to be concerned about it? During this 5-part series, I'm going to provide you with a micro view of the cybersecurity maturity model certification, why it's important to our federal system, how to become certified, and so much more. Thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe and that alert button below so you can stay up to date and receive all of our weekly episodes. All right, CMMC. What is it and who needs it? This is the first part of my 5-part series where I provide you a micro education around CMMC. Here is a quick snapshot of the training series that we have coming up. Right now, we're in part 1. In 2 weeks, we'll be launching part 2, how to prepare for CMMC, how could it impact your organization? And then I'm going to start diving into what is CUI, what is FCI, and what are the 5 levels in the CMMC maturity model. And then part 4 is still TBD as we flush it out. And then we've got the 5th and final series. Here's some just good to know terms within the CMMC. The top 3 are going to be the ones that you'll probably hear me talk about the most. An OSC is an organization which is seeking certification, so a DoD contracting company. A DIB is the Defense Industrial Base, the space that the DoD contracting company would be working in. And then CUI is the reason that we have CMMC. It's understanding and being able to classify what is confidential, unclassified information within these organizations. And the rest of these are just good to know terms. So what is CMMC, and do you really need to become certified? The Cybersecurity Capability Maturity Model Certification is what the US government created to fix the low rates of compliance associated with NIST SP 800-171, which is associated with CUI, also known as Controlled Unclassified Information. CMMC will eventually not be an option for DoD contractors. It is designed to only permit businesses with a valid CMMC certification to bid on and win contracts within the US government. It is a DoD program that applies to the DIB contractors. By 2025, DoD contractors must meet specific CMMC requirements before submitting a proposal submission. And the specific requirements really are dictated on the type of contract that you're going to be going after. If you're a subcontractor, what that prime may need from you as far as the level of certification. This will be something that we dig into a little bit further in the later series. So how did this all happen and why all of a sudden, right? Well, CMMC is not new. It first began in the first part of the 2000s in the Homeland Security Act. So what happened is after 9/11, our federal government saw the need for better data sharing. Spoiler alert, the US federal government is not very good with data sharing. However, even after this, and the post 9/11 commission report, nothing really happened, partly due to the fact that our congressional system just runs extremely slow. So it took a little bit of time. What we saw for the preceding years was more legislation and presidential memorandums supporting better information sharing. Now, fast forward to 2009. This was during Presidential Obama's administration, where he tasked the executive branch to create a presidential task force, which was written around CUI. This report finally created some clarity around what constitutes CUI. This created the very first wave of, we can call it the wave of the CMMC movement. And then a year later, a complementary executive order came out, which started to really push CMMC even further forward. Today, as recent as November 2020, we saw that the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense and the CMMC accreditation body created a partnership. But what does that mean? really means that there is finally a formal relationship to move forward with creating a framework for vetting and approving OSCs who work or want to work in the DIB. And the first thing that happened was updating the requirements for DIB within DFARS. So why now? Well, does anyone remember SolarWinds? That was a huge debacle, and it's something that we aren't even fully aware of the damage or the level of the damage that has happened. And prior to the CMMC, DoD contractors were self-assessing. They were able to check a box to say that, yes, we are compliant, but there was nothing really in place to ensure their compliancy. So when SolarWinds happened, it was a perfect storm. You know, the congressional leaders had been moving in this direction for nearly 20 years. And they were really postured in a place that something needed to happen. And then SolarWinds happened. And if you have seen anything within our congressional leaders, especially in my experience within cybersecurity, were really reactive. So when SolarWinds happened, it was a perfect storm. And it was an opportunity to really push this forward, to really start protecting our federal supply chain and our overall infrastructure within DIB. So who really needs it? And will it really impact you? Like I've said before, the CMMC is focused on OSCs, DoD contractors wanting to work in the DIB space. But don't forget that if you're a subcontractor, you may not directly touch the DoD, but if your prime does, they may require you to get, say, level 3 certified to be able to work in that space. These are all different requirements that are still not completely formalized, but that are still coming out right now. And then who's excluded? It's really an individual that is completely private sector, because you're still, even if you're a subcontractor in the private space, working with a prime that works with the federal government, you may still have to get level 3. So the blanket of who is going to be impacted, I believe, is a lot larger than the individuals that are going to be excluded from being CMMC certified. A conclusion and a wrap up on this. This is not an optional certification for DoD contracting firms. They have till 2025 to become compliant. And now there's a flow on who can be compliant and where that process is. But right now, that marker, that end goal is 2025. You must be compliant to be even able to bid for federal contracts. Going over that again, that's a big thing. And then no waivers or exceptions at this time. So what that means is, say we hit 2025 and we've got some of these smaller organizations that maybe can't afford it, or they're not able to meet the requirements. Right now, there's no waiver for that. And what is that going to look like in 2025? That is still TBD. So the next series will be pushed out, part 2, October 28th. But next week, what we're going to have is a special guest interview series coming on the show. So stay tuned for that. And thanks again for tuning in. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this microeducation series around CMMC. Make sure to comment below. Also like, subscribe, and share with others. Thank you guys all for your support.